My name is Vanessa Reed, and for most of my life, I believed in the illusion of love, loyalty, and family. I grew up in a modest home, raised by parents who taught me that trust was the foundation of every relationship. At 32, I had built a successful career as an interior designer, married the love of my life, Daniel, and was looking forward to starting a family. Life was good, or so I thought. Beneath the surface of my picture-perfect life was a deception so deep, so intricately woven, that by the time I unraveled the truth, it had already consumed everything I held dear. It started with small things, little oddities I dismissed as stress-induced paranoia. I'd find my belongings slightly out of place, feel eyes on me when I was alone, and hear whispers just as I drifted off to sleep. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. Running my own business and maintaining a happy marriage took effort, and I had been overworking myself. But then came the messages. At first, they were anonymous texts, cryptic warnings like, "Not everything is as it seems." Or, "You're living with a stranger." I thought it was a sick prank, maybe an ex-client with a grudge. Daniel reassured me it was nothing, that I should ignore it. And I did. Until the photos arrived. Printed in glossy black and white, they were slipped under my door in an unmarked envelope. The images showed Daniel, my Daniel, embracing another woman. At first, I was in denial. I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, an innocent hug mistaken for something more. But then, more pictures followed. Some in restaurants, others outside hotels. One in our own home, when I had been away visiting my parents. My stomach dropped. My husband was cheating on me. Still, I wanted proof beyond a few grainy photographs. So I did what any desperate woman would do, I followed him. The second life. Daniel had always been predictable. He worked long hours at his finance firm, went to the gym twice a week, and played poker with his friends on Fridays. But one Friday, instead of meeting his friends, he drove to a small town an hour away. I watched from a distance as he parked outside a suburban home and walked through the door without knocking. My pulse thundered in my ears. Who lived there? A mistress? Some secret affair? I had to know. When Daniel finally left the house that night, my heart pounded as I approached the door. My hands were clammy, and every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn around. But I had to know. I knocked. Seconds passed. Then, the door creaked open, revealing a woman around my age, tall, brunette, wearing an oversized sweater. Her eyes landed on me, and immediately, her face drained of color. "Vanessa," she whispered. Hearing my name from a stranger's mouth sent a chill through me. She knew me. I didn't know her at all. I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" For a moment, she just stared, lips parted as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Then, she finally stepped back, opening the door wider. "I think you should come in." I hesitated. Every instinct told me I was about to walk into something I wasn't ready for. But I stepped inside anyway. The house was warm, cozy, lived in. There were framed photos on the walls, a pair of shoes kicked off by the door, a faint smell of fresh laundry in the air. This wasn't some casual fling's apartment. This was a home. And then I saw it. A wedding photo. Daniel's wedding photo. My throat tightened as I slowly walked toward it. There he was, standing next to the woman in front of me, smiling. Happy. Wearing a tuxedo I had never seen before. I turned back to her. She was watching me closely, arms wrapped around herself. "My name is Lillian," she said softly. "I'm Daniel's wife." The words didn't sink in at first. My mind struggled to make sense of them, as if she had spoken a language I didn't understand. I let out a nervous laugh. "I think there's a mistake." "There isn't." She exhaled sharply, her voice trembling. "We've been married for 6 years. My stomach dropped. My fingers gripped the arm of a nearby chair for support. 6 years. My voice barely came out. Lillian nodded, her expression filled with the same raw devastation I felt. "How long have you been with him?" I felt like I was going to throw up. 4 years. The air in the room changed. The weight of our shared horror pressed down on us like a crushing force. I thought I had been cheated on. I thought my husband had a mistress. I was the mistress. My head spun. "I don't understand. He married you before he even met me." Lillian nodded again. "And he never told me about you." Silence. I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying to stop the emotions bubbling up inside me. This was worse than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just an affair, it was bigamy. "How long do you think he was planning to keep this up?" I whispered. Lillian's voice was flat. "Forever." We both knew it was true. I could have broken down then and there. I could have left, let my lawyers handle it, and cut him out of my life. But as I stood in Lillian's home, surrounded by years of lies, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about heartbreak. This was about power. And I refused to let Daniel keep it. I looked at Lillian, really looked at her. He played us both, I said quietly. Her jaw clenched. Yes, we could destroy him. That got her attention. She met my gaze, hesitation flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. We don't just walk away. We don't just file for divorce and let him move on like nothing happened. We make him feel what we felt. Lillian considered this, and then, slowly, something in her expression shifted. The pain was still there, but beneath it, I saw something else, resolve. What do you have in mind? She asked. A plan formed in my mind, dark and delicious. We act like we don't know. Lillian arched a brow. We play the roles he expects us to play. You stay the devoted wife. I stay the loving second wife he thinks is clueless. We gather evidence. We set traps. And when we have everything we need, we ruin him. For the first time since I walked into her home, Lillian smiled. I like the way you think. Phase 1, the performance. For the next few weeks, we put on the performance of a lifetime. At home, I played the doting wife, cooked Daniel's favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, even planned a surprise anniversary dinner. Meanwhile, Lillian did the same. When he kissed me, I let him. When he told me he loved me, I whispered it back. All while knowing another woman was doing the same thing just miles away. We tracked his every move, recorded his lies, built a case against him. Lillian, who worked in finance, dug through his accounts, uncovering all the ways he had supported his double life. The more we uncovered, the angrier we became. Phase 2, the truth. And then, on one fateful night, we invited him to dinner. Both of us. At the same restaurant. Daniel arrived first, expecting a romantic evening with me. He kissed my cheek, completely unaware that his world was about to shatter. Then, Lillian walked in. His face drained of color. For a moment, he looked between us as if his brain simply couldn't process what was happening. Then, panic set in. What is this? He stammered. Vanessa, why is she? Lillian cut him off. Oh, don't play dumb, Daniel. You know exactly why I'm here. He turned to me, eyes pleading. Baby, I don't know what she's told you, but I threw the wedding photos on the table. The ones from her wedding. The first wedding. His jaw snapped shut. Lillian slid a second envelope across the table. Financial fraud. We found everything. 2 mortgages. 2 bank accounts. Even 2 engagement rings. Daniel swallowed hard. His hands clenched into fists. He knew there was no way out of this. And then, I delivered the final blow. We reported you. His eyes widened. Bigamy is a crime, Lillian added, her voice sickly sweet. Enjoy prison. The restaurant was silent except for the sound of his heavy breathing. His once polished composure shattered before our eyes. He opened his mouth, but there were no excuses left to give. This time, he was the one erased. The moment Daniel was arrested, I felt like I could finally breathe again. It wasn't just the satisfaction of seeing him in handcuffs, it was the knowledge that he could no longer manipulate, lie to, or hurt anyone else. Lillian and I sat together in the courtroom on the day of his arraignment, a silent force of unity. He was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller, more pathetic than I had ever seen him. When his eyes met mine, there was no love, no remorse, only desperation. Vanessa, he started, his voice hoarse. Please. Lillian let out a sharp laugh. Oh, now you want to talk. The judge silenced him with a warning glance, and the proceedings continued. The evidence was damning, bank records, witness statements, even the texts he had sent each of us, all telling different versions of the same lie. His lawyer tried to argue that it wasn't true bigamy, that it had all been a misunderstanding, but even the judge looked unimpressed. When the final verdict was announced, guilty, I felt Lillian grip my hand under the table. We didn't say anything, just sat there, absorbing the moment. As they led Daniel away, he turned back one last time. His lips parted, but I shook my head before he could speak. There's nothing left to say, Daniel, I murmured. And just like that, he was gone. A week later, Lillian and I met for coffee, something that had become a strange new routine for us. We sat by the window of a quiet cafe, both of us still adjusting to the reality of life after Daniel. Lillian took a deep breath, stirring her latte. I keep thinking about what would have happened if we never found out. I nodded. We would have kept living his lie. I would have kept thinking you were the other woman, and you would have kept thinking I didn't exist. She let out a bitter chuckle. And he would have kept smiling through it all. Unbothered. Untouched. A silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, just heavy. I finally broke it. So, what now? Lillian exhaled slowly. I'm selling the house. That surprised me. The one you shared with him. She nodded, her expression unreadable. I thought about keeping it, but honestly, I don't want to sleep in the same bed he came home to after leaving you. It's poisoned. I got that. More than she knew. I'm selling mine too, I admitted. New start. She raised a brow. Where to? Not sure yet. Maybe somewhere warmer. Somewhere that doesn't remind me of him. Lillian tapped her fingers against her mug. Maybe I'll do the same. A pause. Then, she smirked. You know, if we end up in the same city, I think we'd make great neighbors. I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in months. I think we would. 2 months later, I stood outside my old house, watching as the last moving box was loaded onto the truck. The place where Daniel and I had once built our fake future together now felt like a prison I was finally escaping. Lillian had texted me earlier that morning. Bought a place in Miami. You. I smiled as I typed back. LA. Fresh start. Her reply came instantly. Good. No ghosts. I let out a breath and slid my phone into my pocket. No ghosts. No Daniel. Just me, finally free. I walked away with my freedom. And the sweet, undeniable satisfaction that karma had done its job. My name is Olivia Carter, and I'm 34 years old. I've always been the kind of person who believes in the power of kindness, second chances, and the strength of family. Growing up, I envisioned a life filled with love, strong relationships, and a sense of belonging. When I married my husband, Harry, I thought I had gained not only a wonderful partner but also a new family to embrace. But I was wrong. From the moment I entered Harry's family, my relationship with his sister, alone, was strained. There was no obvious reason, no incident, no misunderstanding, just an unspoken resentment that seemed to simmer beneath the surface. She always found ways to undermine me, her passive-aggressive comments and biting remarks turning every family gathering into a test of patience. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just her personality. But as time passed, it became clear that this was more than just sibling rivalry or an adjustment period. She despised me. For the sake of family unity, Harry and I extended kindness to her, especially after she suffered a miscarriage. We hoped that compassion might soften the tension between us, but it only seemed to deepen her resentment. Alone thrived on control, and my presence disrupted the family dynamic she had always dominated. She took jabs at my career, questioned my parenting, and even criticized my appearance. Worse, she tried to drive a wedge between Harry and me, whispering lies in his ear and spreading baseless rumors. I did my best to rise above it, but her constant antagonism wore me down. I had always been patient, always willing to keep the peace, but she was relentless. And then, the final betrayal came. When Alone was getting married, she deliberately hid the wedding details from us. She lied about the date and location, ensuring we wouldn't be there. I only found out through mutual friends' social media posts, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an oversight. It was intentional. She had wanted to erase us from the most important day of her life. The hurt ran deep, but it didn't just affect me. Her actions led to a fallout with our in-laws, who withdrew their financial support from her. Even then, she showed no remorse. Instead, she played the victim, painting me as the villain in her twisted narrative. A year later, Harry and I discovered we were expecting our second child. It was a surprise but a joyous one, and we decided to announce the news at his birthday celebration. We had kept it a secret, waiting for the perfect moment to share our happiness. That night, to my shock, Alone showed up. She claimed she had changed after attending therapy, her demeanor suddenly warm and apologetic. She was overly cheerful, almost rehearsed in her sincerity. I wanted to believe in second chances, but deep down, something didn't sit right. When we announced the pregnancy, I saw it, the moment her expression faltered. Her forced smile, the tension in her posture, the flicker of something dark behind her eyes. Then, in an act of apparent goodwill, she approached me with a plate of food, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I wanted to be the one to serve you, she said, placing it in front of me with an almost eager anticipation. It was a small gesture, but it touched me. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe I had been too harsh in my assumptions. Then I looked down. Shrimp. I'm highly allergic. Confused, I glanced up, and there she was, watching me. Unblinking, studying my reaction. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was an accident, that she had simply forgotten. But something in her eyes told me otherwise. She was waiting for me to take a bite. Unwilling to make a scene, I casually pushed the plate toward her estranged husband, Jamie, who happily accepted it, unaware of the silent battle taking place between his wife and me. Minutes later, chaos erupted. Jamie collapsed. His body convulsed violently, his breathing ragged. Panic spread through the room. Someone called for an ambulance while Harry and I rushed to his side. My heart pounded, a terrifying realization settling in my bones. That plate had been meant for me. If I hadn't noticed the shrimp, I would have been the one lying there, struggling to breathe, fighting for my life. Security footage later confirmed what I already knew. The video showed Alone carefully preparing the plate, watching me with unsettling focus as she handed it over. There was no mistake, no accident, only malice. When confronted, she confessed. In court, she claimed it was never meant to be serious, just enough to cause distress and steal the spotlight. Jealousy, rage, and years of pent-up resentment had driven her to this moment. She tried to justify it, but there was no justification. Jamie, after recovering, pressed charges and filed for divorce. Alone was sentenced to prison, finally facing the consequences of her actions. The family was shattered. My in-laws were devastated, torn between love for their daughter and the undeniable horror of what she had done. But they stood by what was right, refusing to enable her any further. In the aftermath, Harry and I moved forward. We welcomed our daughter into the world, a beacon of light after so much darkness. Our son, Nate, adores his little sister, and we cherish the peace that has returned to our lives. We have tightened our circle, surrounding ourselves with people who truly love and support us. The scars of the past remain, but they remind me of important lessons: resilience, the importance of boundaries, and the strength it takes to walk away from toxic relationships, even when they involve family. Through it all, I have emerged stronger, more grateful, and more determined than ever to focus on the love that surrounds me rather than the shadows of betrayal that once loomed over my life. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an amazing story.